So I think there are a few different ways that I love to think about transparency in hiring. The first one is I worry a ton about what's called the honeymoon hangover effect, where people get recruited with a very rosy picture of the job and the culture that they're joining, and then they find out a couple weeks later, like, this is a job, and this is a company, and it's not as fun and as exciting as I thought it was going to be. And then what happens is job satisfaction and engagement drop. They're at greater risk for burnout. They're more likely to leave. And so I think what we found in organizational psychology for a long time is it's actually helpful to give people a realistic preview and say, here are the warts. This job is not perfect. Here are some of the challenges we're facing in our culture right now. These values are really important to us. We think we're doing a good job living by 3 of them. There's one, transparency or whatever it is, where we're falling short. And there may be a slight risk when it comes to recruiting there, and yield goes down, but retention goes up. Performance and satisfaction are invested in that.
Yep.
So I think that's the first way to think about it. Second way to think about this is I want to bring in people who are willing to be transparent. And so one of the things I love doing at the end of a job interview when I hire is I will ask people, if you were redesigning our interview process, what would you do differently? This is, by the way, the lowest hanging fruit in terms of learning from candidates as long as they're in front of you. But also, you see 2 extremes that are problematic from my view. One is people are they're just too polite. And they're like, well, no, I love your interview process. I'm like, wow, you are a terrible liar, and you are not going to work out here. The other extreme is, they basically just start trashing your entire company. And they're like, well, this whole thing is broken. I would start over from scratch. I'm like, you are not going to make any friends in this organization. What I'm looking for is somebody who can constructively challenge, who can say, I actually think your interview was too much of a pressure cooker. And what you saw is my ability to manage stress, not my ability to perform at my best on a daily basis.
Yep.
And I'm like, OK, that's interesting. Tell me more. I want to try to adjust to make sure people can put their best foot forward.
Yeah. Awesome. I'd love to switch gears a little bit now and talk about AI, because I think that AI is at the root of a lot of these tensions that we're seeing emerging. I know undeniably AI is going to help businesses become a lot more effective, and my belief is we're only scratching the surface on that. But we also know they can be really overwhelming for employees, and we recently did a poll on Glassdoor, and on this poll, 56% of professionals said they're worried about their job security because of AI adoption, so a really significant portion of people. So what lessons do you have for employers that want to actually engage their employees on this journey and this transition to AI?
Well, let's take the temperature of the room. So we've got a great group of HR and people leaders here. How many of you have concerns about your job security vis-a-vis AI? Not very many of you. AI can't do HR. This is good news. It requires human judgment. So I think the question is then, how do we take the security that this room feels and first and foremost empathize with the insecurity that other people are feeling? Mm-hmm. I think that's the starting point. I think what a lot of leaders are doing wrong is they are talking about all the great things that will happen if we accelerate our AI adoption. And I think I understand that. You want to be upbeat and positive. You want to get people energized around learning and adapting and upskilling and also, frankly, offloading a bunch of work that we don't want to be doing ourselves.
Yeah.
But the problem with that messaging is people, no matter how many gains there are that you can highlight, people associate some losses with giving up the status quo. They are going to walk away from competencies that they've spent hours, weeks, maybe years or decades building. Mm-hmm. And there's a real open question there about what does that mean for my mastery of my job, for my excellence, for my expertise. And then there's a second order question of, okay, and am I still going to have a job? And so I think maybe more honest, more effective messaging on that is to say, here are the bad things that are going to happen if we don't adopt AI, which is our entire organization is going to become obsolete. And we don't want to be left behind. And the best way for you to stay employable is to make sure that we continue to exist. And I think that's a little bit of an uncomfortable conversation to have at times. But what we know psychologically is when you talk about the reasons why the status quo is problematic, people are more willing to let go of it and then consider a change. Whereas when you talk about why the change is good, people kind of cling to the status quo.
Interesting. So you touched on kind of how AI will replace some competencies and skills that people hold on to today. But I also know that you believe, and you've said before, that as AI becomes more and more important, other human skills and qualities and competencies and characteristics will become more important. Maybe just to be provocative, though, in an AI-first world, what will those really be? Are we perhaps overestimating the importance of things like empathy or connection in an AI-first world and underestimating how good AI will become?
Yes. Next question. Yeah, no, I actually got this completely wrong last year. Completely wrong. I was asked to make some forecasts about what are the skills that humans need to invest in. And I did, as I always try to, my disclaimer about how no one has a crystal ball. Yep. And predicting the future is so hard that historians don't even predict the past with perfect accuracy. So we should all do this with humility. But what I felt pretty confident in is there were a set of human skills that AI was never going to catch up to, and one of those I thought was empathy.
Yep.
And in the last year, the empirical evidence has completely falsified that hypothesis. Not even close. There have been many, many studies across many professions. I think doctors are the most interesting ones, where if you have people type in a problem or concern into a chat window, and then they get a chat response back, and they don't know whether it's AI or human. Yep. If the response was written by ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, they feel more supported, more seen, more cared about, more empathized with. And that's true whether they're on the receiving end of comments from a doctor or a therapist or a potential date. And that's kind of terrifying. Now, the good news, Owen, is that if you tell them it came from the AI, they don't like it anymore. So they still want the human interaction, but they want the AI quality.
Yeah.
I think the other piece of good news is that AI beats the average human. But that's not a statement that AI has empathy genius. It's that the average human sucks at empathy. Right? Like you open up about the traumatic experience of your childhood, and I'm like, I totally get it. My cat threw up yesterday. And with a whole database in a large language model, like an AI can do a decent job approximating, let me respond to your experience and your pain, as opposed to then conversational narcissism. Well, let me tell you about my pain and join the Suffering Olympics.
Yeah.
I think I aspire to win the Suffering Olympics one day. It sounds like a fun competition. No. I think, though, that what this means is that there are a lot of skills that we thought were going to be human specialty that are not. Yeah. I think what the good news about that, though, is that as I look at what AIs do differently from humans on average, I can learn to be more empathetic. And I think a lot of people are probably talking about the cognitive debt idea that if you become too reliant on AI and you use it as a crutch, you actually get dumber. There is some rigorous evidence for that. There's a Lancet paper recently, doctors detecting cancer. When they rely on AI heavily, when the AI is taken away, their skills start to atrophy. And their detection rates actually go down from pre-AI use, which suggests that a lot of knowledge or expertise is like a muscle. There's also, though, a growing body of evidence, and my favorite demonstration is with customer service reps, that if they're trained to use AI regularly and there's an AI outage, the ones who have been using AI more heavily are better during the AI outage. Because the service reps, unlike the cancer doctors, have been looking at the AI responses and internalizing the best of them, and then kind of expanding their repertoire with that. And I think that might be the future of how we think about the human-AI relationship is, I'm not better at empathy than an AI, but there are things that I can learn from an AI, and maybe I can use human judgment to apply those in a more tailored and relevant way.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So yeah, I'm not better today, but AI can actually make me better, leveraging then some of the human judgment and the more uniquely human things that I have over time.
That's what I should have said.
And so recognizing that when you're back here in a year's time, you'll admit you were wrong about it again. Do you have a current perspective, though, on if you were to pick a handful of skills that you still think humans have the edge on? Yeah. How's your thinking evolved on that?
Yeah, I think right now, I haven't seen any compelling evidence yet, and I'm going to say this really carefully. The answer, the qualifier is yet, that AI tools are good at character skills. I have not seen a chatbot that can judge what effective and appropriate generosity looks like. I have not seen one that has mastered humility. In fact, most of them hallucinate and make stuff up and don't even acknowledge that they're doing it, right? And then you have to fact check and ask, what are your sources for that? And then discover the sources were made up.
Yeah.
I don't think we know yet how to even think about integrity in the context of AI. And so I think humans living by principles is still a competitive advantage for us.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's made me wonder about a lot is how do we actually gauge character in the hiring process? Is that something you do personally?
I mean, I think that our closest proxy is when I'm hiring rather than through our platform that I think for character is values alignment and trying to do our best to see if candidates align with our values and can be additive to the values. But it's really, really hard. You know, it's the type of thing that I think is difficult to elucidate in a simple set of questions. But it is interesting to think about how if you don't have to spend as much time filtering through in an interview process on the basic facts, you could spend more time arguably focusing on things like character and values.
I think that makes a ton of sense. I know earlier today there was a bunch of discussion about the shift away from resumes and towards skills-based hiring, which I think is long overdue. I mean, we've had evidence now for several years that the amount of work experience somebody has doing a job previously is irrelevant to their performance in that job once you hire them. Irrelevant. And a lot of you know this already, but it's easy to ask for, and we've been in the habit of asking for it.
Yeah.
I think hiring for skills is great. I want to supplement those skills not just with, how good are you at the tasks in the job, but also what are your character skills?
Yeah.
What are you going to do in hard situations where you face a conflict between honesty and loyalty? Or when you face a tension between doing what's best for your team and doing what's best for your company?
Yep.
I think the questions of how you navigate those kinds of challenges are increasingly important. And I guess I've been thinking about that a lot since I started my early research on givers versus takers. And how do you screen out the most selfish takers from your organization and bring in people who actually want to elevate other people?
Yep.
I feel like we should talk a little bit about how to do that.
Yeah. Who are you seeing doing that really well today? And what lessons can we all learn from how to do that? Because it sounds great in theory, but it's how do you do that, especially in a hiring process where you have a limited amount of time?
So let's look at two examples that I've been really struck by.
Yeah.
One is the GE aircraft engine plant in Durham, North Carolina, where for years they were hiring aircraft mechanics, and they had technical geniuses, but they did not always play well with others. And they needed to figure out, half of this job is using your technical skill to collaborate fast, to be able to do repairs and troubleshoot problems. And they wanted to figure out, how do we get at that efficiently in the hiring process, given that it's, it sounds like a soft skill and it's hard to quantify. And they ended up testing a series of assessment center exercises. And my favorite one is you come in for the interview, and there are 6 other mechanic candidates there with you. And you're like, why are other people in my interview slot? And they sit you down, and they dump a pile of Legos on the table. And they give you specs for building a Lego helicopter. You have half an hour, and you have to work as a team of 6 or 7 to build the helicopter. And you've got a team of assessors who are observing your collaboration habits without fail, because you're not told what you're being assessed on. There will be a mechanic or 2 who starts to hoard all the Legos for themselves. And another who actually will take somebody else's apart. And the ones that they because they want to win.
That's a red flag.
Yeah, big red flag. But they're like, I want to demonstrate that I could do this best and fastest.
Yeah.
And obviously, the ones they want to hire are the ones who make the group successful and who kind of have an ethos of, I don't care about being the smartest person in the room. I want to make the room smarter. So I think that's a great example. I think we need more of these kinds of work samples and demonstrations where people can actually show what they know and what they're motivated to do.
Yeah.
The other thing I think we need is more situational questions, where instead of the brain teasers that consultants love, like how many golf balls can you fit in a jumbo jet, which tells you nothing about job candidates, by the way,
Yep.
but does reveal which interviewers are narcissists and sadists. That's not a joke.
That was one of my favorite questions, Adam. No, not really. Not really.
Believe it or not, there's empirical evidence on this, that the managers who like to throw those questions at you are the ones who like to see people squirm. So that, I think a better version of what you're trying to do in that, which is see how people think in real time and how they problem solve, is to say, let me give you a question that's relevant to our organization. and ask you what would you do if, and give you some scenarios that actually differentiate our best performers from our poorest performers. And I think sometimes these questions can be really elaborate. Sometimes they can be very simple. Let me give you one example that I love. Let's say you are trying to screen on whether somebody's going to be honest or not. Question is, what % of employees do you think steal at least $10 US from their employer in a typical month? Think about it for a second. I'm going to ask all of you to think about it. How common is theft by employees from employers in a typical month? And we'll define theft. We'll include cash, IP, materials, merchandise. Let's get a show of hands. How many people think the theft rate is 0 to 20% in a typical month? Raise your hands higher, please, so we can find...
20.
Yeah, 0 to 20?
Yeah.
I want to know who the optimists in the room are. OK. Where are the 21 to 40%? Raise your hands, please.
Wow.
OK, 41 to 60, 61 to 80, and 81 to 99. Anyone for 100? OK, you realize that includes you, right? Ladies and gentlemen, we have a thief in row 2. Now, take your results with a grain of salt. I'm not going to ever judge you by one response. But what I will say, Owen, is that there's about 35 years of evidence to suggest that the higher your estimate that other people are thieves, the greater the odds that you are a thief. So you passed my test. Should we break this down quickly?
Yeah.
All right, hold on. You're still not being judged, don't worry. So here's what happens. And this is just an illustrative question. When people go to predict others' behavior, what they usually do is they ask themselves, what would I do? Or what have I done? And then they project that onto others. So an extreme thief answering this question is like, last week I stole $342. Thieves always talk that way, by the way. Like 10 a month has got to be pretty common, 94%. Whereas an extremely honest person would be like, how do you even steal $10 from a company? Like, how many pens do you have to take? It's got to be thousands. I don't know, like 2% of people do that. And these differences play out in large samples.
Yeah.
What we see is that, I've seen this a ton in my work on givers and takers, the most dishonest, selfish takers are the ones who rationalize and justify selfishness and dishonesty. They're like, it's not me. I think all of you people are selfish. And I'm being smart and cautious to protect myself. So here's the way you apply this.
Yeah.
In your hiring process, think about the dishonesty or the selfishness you are most worried about. It could be hoarding knowledge instead of sharing it freely. It could be dumping grunt work on others. It could be lying or cheating. It might be refusing to mentor junior people. Ask candidates how common that behavior is. And then if they give a high estimate, you don't be like, interview's over. You say, how did you come up with your estimate?
Yeah.
And there are lots of acceptable answers like, I used to work with a lot of thieves. Or, not on purpose. Or it was my job to catch thieves, and I know the base rate was really high. Or I define theft really broadly. I include like taking food from the cafeteria. They want me to have that.
Too many bananas.
Exactly. Those are fine, right? The deadly answer is when somebody says, I just believe that human beings are fundamentally selfish and dishonest. And that is code for you are selfish and dishonest. So that's probably my favorite.
Yeah, this is incredible. I mean, I honestly, I didn't think we were going to get such actionable advice, but like how to go take this tomorrow and build it into our interview process.